Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what truly happens behind the closed doors of a woman's apartment when there is no man living there? What secret truths lie in the silence of those rooms? Tonight, let us set aside the myths, lift the veil of societal judgment, and look directly into the luminous and sometimes shadowed reality of women who live alone. In the end, the truth about women who live alone without a man is not one of loneliness or lack, but of profound courage, depth, and contribution. These women stand as living proof that a meaningful, joyful, and impactful life does not hinge on traditional roles or the presence of a partner. Through their independence, they embark on journeys of self-discovery that reveal their true essence, build emotional resilience that carries them through life's storms, and cultivate fulfillment that comes from within rather than external validation. They reject outdated stereotypes, embracing their wholeness with fierce authenticity, and in doing so, they model a freedom that inspires others to question what it means to live well. These women do not exist apart from society, but help shape it through their creativity, service, and advocacy. They remind us that every person, regardless of relationship status, has the potential to enrich our communities and leave a legacy of compassion, courage, and vision. Let us honor and celebrate these lives not as exceptions or curiosities, but as powerful examples of what it means to chart one's own course with integrity and purpose. May their stories embolden each of us to listen more deeply to our own hearts and to recognize that fulfillment and contribution are found not in conformity, but in the brave act of becoming fully ourselves. A woman who lives alone has a unique vantage point from which to see herself not only as an individual, but as a participant in the larger tapestry of society. Freed from the consuming responsibilities that can come with traditional roles, she often finds herself with time, energy, and focus to pour into causes beyond her own immediate needs. Rather than retreating into solitude, many women who live alone become active contributors to their communities, using their independence to advocate for change, uplift others, and leave a mark that endures beyond their own lives. Through these acts, they challenge the outdated notion that a woman alone is a woman disconnected or disengaged. Living alone fosters a deep awareness of interdependence. She knows what it is to rely on herself, but she also knows that no one thrives in a vacuum. This dual understanding often motivates her to help build support systems for those who are vulnerable or marginalized. She might volunteer at shelters, tutor children who need extra attention, or offer mentorship to younger women finding their paths. Because she understands loneliness and resilience from the inside, she brings empathy and insight that enrich her contributions, transforming them from mere charity into acts of solidarity. Her professional life, too, often reflects a desire to contribute beyond personal advancement. Without the constraints of fitting a career around someone else's expectations, she can choose work that aligns closely with her sense of purpose. She may become a social worker, an artist creating pieces that challenge norms, a scientist driven to find solutions for public health crises, or an entrepreneur whose business practices center on fairness and sustainability. In each case, her independence allows her to innovate, to take risks for what she believes in, and to pursue excellence without compromise. Women who live alone frequently become voices for change in conversations that matter. They write, speak, organize, and campaign for issues like gender equality, reproductive rights, environmental sustainability, mental health awareness, and more. They refuse to be silent or sidelined, knowing that their freedom gives them a platform to advocate for others who might not yet have the same agency. By using their voices publicly, they push back against stereotypes that women's contributions must happen only within a family or romantic partnership, showing that single women can and do lead movements and inspire communities. Cultural contributions from women living alone are equally significant. Many authors, musicians, visual artists, filmmakers, and performers who have shaped our understanding of humanity were women who spent much of their lives without a partner. Their solitude allowed them to hear their own creative impulses more clearly, to experiment without fear of judgment, and to persist through the inevitable failures that precede breakthroughs. The art they produce expands our collective imagination and challenges our assumptions about what women can create when they claim the space to do so. Moreover, women who live alone often redefine hospitality and connection, fostering networks of support and friendship that stretch beyond traditional family structures. They create chosen families that welcome people of diverse backgrounds, offering a place of belonging for those who may feel excluded elsewhere. By opening their homes, hearts, and schedules to friends, neighbors, and colleagues, they demonstrate that love and care need not be confined to marriage or blood relations. These small acts of kindness and inclusion ripple outward, strengthening the social fabric in ways that formal institutions often cannot. Their contributions also serve as powerful examples for future generations. Young girls and women watching them see that there is more than one way to live a valuable, impactful life. They learn that their worth is not contingent upon their ability to marry or bear children, but upon their courage, creativity, compassion, and commitment to the world around them. Each woman who lives alone and contributes boldly plants a seed of possibility in others, expanding the range of dreams they dare to have. As society changes, the importance of these contributions becomes ever clearer. In times of crisis, whether natural disasters, pandemics, or social upheavals, it is often women living alone who mobilize quickly, adapt creatively, and fill gaps in care or advocacy. Their ability to act decisively without needing consensus in a household can make them nimble responders to urgent needs. Their lived experience of self-reliance combined with empathy becomes a vital asset not just to individuals in their circles, but to society at large. By weaving together purpose, creativity, service, and advocacy, a woman who lives alone models a form of citizenship that transcends outdated definitions of a woman's role. She shows that fulfillment and contribution are not mutually exclusive, but deeply intertwined, that a life lived on one's own terms can be a life that lifts others as well. Her presence in society expands what is possible, not only for women, but for all who seek to live authentically and give generously. For a woman living alone, fulfillment is no longer a destination defined by traditional milestones, but a journey crafted by her own hands. Without the conventional anchors of marriage or children to signal achievement, she is free and required to ask herself what it truly means to lead a meaningful life. This redefinition is both liberating and daunting because it demands an honest exploration of what brings her joy, purpose, and peace beyond the scripts handed down by family, culture, or peers. In this exploration, she learns that fulfillment can take many forms, each as valid and rich as the next. She discovers fulfillment in pursuits that nourish her soul, whether it is building a career that aligns with her passions, devoting herself to artistic expression, traveling to unfamiliar places that challenge her perspective, or volunteering her time to causes she believes in. Without the need to negotiate these choices with a partner or family, she can invest fully in them, shaping a life that reflects her deepest values. The sense of accomplishment she feels in these endeavors is rooted not in external praise, but in the quiet certainty that she is living authentically. In redefining fulfillment, she learns to appreciate the small moments that might be overlooked in a more crowded life. The morning ritual of brewing coffee in silence becomes an act of self-care. Evenings spent curled up with a book are savored instead of rushed. She finds contentment in the order and peace of her own space, where everything has its place and reflects her tastes. These daily mindful experiences remind her that fulfillment does not always require grand achievements. It can be found in the steady practice of cherishing her own company and creating beauty in her surroundings. Her relationships, too, take on new meaning. Without the default assumption that a romantic partnership is the pinnacle of connection, she invests more intentionally in friendships, family ties, and communities of shared interest. She learns that fulfillment in love does not have to come from one person who meets every need, but can emerge from a network of bonds that offer different kinds of support, laughter, and understanding. These chosen relationships are often richer for being freely entered and maintained, not held together by obligation or social expectation. She also redefines fulfillment by exploring her own potential without limits set by others' expectations. She can pivot careers in midlife without worrying about destabilizing a household or return to school to study a subject that fascinates her. She can dedicate herself to personal growth, therapy, or spiritual practices that deepen her sense of connection to herself and the world. In doing so, she embraces the idea that fulfillment is a lifelong process, not something to check off a list by a certain age. Part of her redefinition involves letting go of comparison. She learns to witness the paths of friends and peers, weddings, babies, anniversaries, without measuring her life against theirs. Instead, she cultivates gratitude for the unique opportunities her own path offers, the freedom to move cities on a whim, the time to focus deeply on a passion project, the ability to spend weekends entirely on her terms. She recognizes that fulfillment is subjective, and the more she aligns her choices with her true desires, the less interested she becomes in whether her life looks conventional to others. Challenges along the way become part of what makes fulfillment meaningful, rather than diminishing it. She accepts that loneliness will sometimes visit her, that doubts may surface in quiet moments, and that society's voices may still whisper that she is missing something. But by facing these moments with courage and curiosity, she transforms them into opportunities for deeper understanding and resilience. Each time she overcomes a fear or moves through sadness, she finds a renewed sense of purpose and self-respect. Through all of this, she learns that fulfillment is not a static achievement, but an evolving relationship with herself and the world. It shifts as she grows, requiring her to check in regularly with her own heart. What do I long for now? What makes me feel alive today? She honors the seasons of her life, knowing that what fulfilled her at 30 may look different at 50, and that this evolution is not a failure but a sign of vitality. Ultimately, a woman who lives alone discovers that fulfillment comes from living a life of her own making, guided by her passions, values, and curiosities, rather than by fear or convention. She writes her own story each day, unafraid to revise it as she learns more about herself. In doing so, she finds that a life without a traditional ending can be filled with wonder, connection, and deep satisfaction, a testament to the power of defining fulfillment on one's own terms. A woman who lives alone quickly learns that emotional resilience is not a luxury but a necessity woven into the fabric of her daily life. Without the immediate comfort of a partner to lean on, she becomes her own first responder to every challenge, whether it is a rough day at work, an unexpected health scare, or the hollow quiet of holidays spent without family. From the outside, this might seem lonely or even harsh, but it is through these moments that she cultivates a profound inner strength. She discovers that resilience is not about never feeling pain, but about moving through it with grace and determination. Each day alone invites opportunities to build resilience in small, often unseen ways. She learns to motivate herself out of bed when sadness weighs her down, because no one else will remind her of her purpose. She becomes skilled at navigating moments of fear, like the sudden creak of the floorboards in the night or the uncertainty of facing a major life decision alone. These experiences, while difficult, train her to sit with discomfort and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Over time, what once overwhelmed her becomes familiar terrain, and she meets challenges with a steadier heart. Emotional resilience grows not just from hardship, but also from her capacity to nurture herself in times of need. A woman living alone becomes fluent in self-soothing rituals, a hot bath after a stressful day, a long walk to clear her mind, a favorite song that lifts her mood. She learns what calms her and what energizes her, developing a personal toolkit to weather emotional storms. This ability to care for herself creates a sense of safety within her own company. Instead of fearing moments of sadness or anxiety, she knows she can face them, and that they will pass. Living alone, she also learns to reframe failures and setbacks. With no one else immediately there to console or offer a different perspective, she must find her own meaning in disappointment. Did a relationship end? Did a career opportunity slip away? Rather than letting these moments define her worth, she practices seeing them as steps on her path, experiences to learn from rather than catastrophes to avoid. This shift in mindset doesn't eliminate pain but reduces its power to derail her confidence. Each time she recovers from a setback, she adds another layer to her emotional armor. Part of resilience is knowing when to seek help, and a woman living alone must develop the courage to reach beyond her walls. Emotional resilience does not mean isolation. It means recognizing when she needs the support of friends, family, or professionals, and asking for it without shame. By learning to build and lean on a chosen community, she reinforces her own strength while staying connected. She understands that independence does not require rejecting support, but rather discerning when to stand alone and when to let others in. Resilience also emerges in how she manages her inner dialogue. Living alone can mean spending long hours with one's own thoughts, and the mind can easily drift into self-criticism or worry. A resilient woman learns to challenge negative beliefs about herself, to speak to herself with kindness rather than harshness. She practices gratitude to shift her focus toward what is going well, even in the face of struggle. By cultivating a compassionate relationship with herself, she transforms her solitude from a place of potential self-doubt into fertile ground for emotional growth. This emotional resilience extends beyond personal struggles. It equips her to engage more fully with the world. Because she knows she can face her own storms, she does not fear others' emotions. She can be present for friends in crisis without becoming overwhelmed. She can navigate professional challenges without crumbling under pressure. She can advocate for herself in difficult conversations, unafraid of rejection or conflict. Her strength becomes a resource not only for herself but for everyone she chooses to support and inspire. As she continues to live alone, resilience becomes less an effort and more a natural part of who she is. She recognizes that life will always include uncertainty, loss, and moments of fear, and she accepts these as inevitable parts of the human experience rather than evidence of personal failure. Each time she picks herself up after being knocked down, her belief in her own capacity deepens. She no longer sees herself as fragile or unprotected, but as someone who has weathered storms and knows she can again. Through the daily practice of meeting herself with patience, compassion, and determination, a woman who lives alone develops a quiet, unshakable resilience. She does not become immune to pain, but she learns that pain does not define or destroy her. In her solitude, she discovers that she is not only capable of surviving life's trials, but of emerging from them wiser, stronger, and more deeply connected to her own humanity. When a woman lives alone, she steps into a rare space where self-discovery becomes not only possible, but unavoidable. Without the constant presence of another's voice shaping her days, she is invited to listen more deeply to her own. It is in this solitude that the lifelong process of individuation begins to unfold, the journey of becoming the person she truly is, beyond the expectations, fears, or hopes of those around her. In the quiet of her own company, she encounters the raw, unvarnished essence of herself, her desires, wounds, strengths, and contradictions. Living alone strips away many of the roles that can blur a person's identity, without the daily demands of performing for a partner. A woman discovers which parts of herself are genuine and which were adopted to keep peace or win approval. She learns how she wants to spend her time when no one else's preferences dictate the plan. She notices what activities nourish her, what drains her, and what longings emerge when the noise of the world falls silent. These small discoveries, day after day, accumulate into a profound understanding of who she is and what matters to her. This process can be both exhilarating and unsettling. It is exhilarating because each realization about herself unlocks new possibilities, a passion for painting, a fascination with philosophy, or a newfound love of solo travel. She finds corners of her mind that had been neglected while tending to others. But it can also be unsettling because self-discovery often brings uncomfortable truths, old insecurities, unhealed grief, or patterns of thought that hold her back. Without distractions, these shadows rise to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. Yet it is only by facing them that she can begin to heal and grow beyond them. In solitude, she experiences emotions with an intensity that might be diluted in constant company. Joy becomes sharper. She might dance alone in her kitchen simply because she feels free. Sadness can feel deeper too, as there is no immediate hand to hold or voice to reassure her. But in sitting with these emotions, rather than rushing to escape them, she becomes intimately acquainted with her inner world. She learns to soothe herself, to celebrate herself, and to trust herself. This emotional self-sufficiency is a hallmark of individuation. She no longer looks outside herself for constant affirmation or rescue. Self-discovery in solitude also leads to clarifying her values. Freed from the need to compromise every day, she can observe which principles she lives by when no one is watching. Perhaps she realizes she values honesty more than comfort, adventure more than security, or creativity more than conformity. By seeing these priorities emerge in her choices, she begins to craft a life aligned with her truest self, rather than one molded by external pressures. This alignment fosters a quiet confidence. She knows what she stands for and why. Individuation also reveals the complexity of the self. Living alone, a woman is less likely to flatten herself into a role, always strong, always accommodating, always cheerful. She can be brave in one moment and terrified the next, disciplined one day and indulgent the next. She learns to embrace her contradictions instead of apologizing for them. She recognizes that being whole does not mean being perfect, but rather accepting every facet of herself, even those that society deems unattractive or inconvenient. This acceptance brings an inner peace that cannot be given by anyone else. As she grows more attuned to herself, a woman living alone often finds her relationships evolving as well. She becomes more discerning about the people she lets into her life, choosing friendships and partnerships that honor who she is becoming, rather than those who only understand who she once was. She may spend less time in relationships that feel obligatory or draining, investing instead in connections that are mutual, respectful, and life-giving. In this way, individuation does not isolate her from others, but prepares her for deeper, more authentic relationships. Through this process of self-discovery, a woman's sense of identity becomes rooted not in fleeting roles, but in a stable, evolving awareness of herself. She learns that the goal is not to become what others want, but to unfold into her own unique pattern, the intricate design of her thoughts, feelings, dreams, and fears. Each day alone becomes an opportunity to deepen this understanding, to refine her sense of self, and to step more fully into the life she chooses to create. Over time, she realizes that the greatest gift of living alone is not the absence of a partner, but the presence of herself, a presence she has come to know, trust, and cherish. For generations, society has spun a narrow tale about what a woman's life should look like: grow up, marry, bear children, and build a life defined by service to her family. The image of a woman alone, especially one who chooses that state, has long stood as a silent rebellion against this script. From hushed gossip in neighborhoods to casual jokes in movies, single women living alone have been labeled as pitiable, selfish, or suspicious. Yet with every woman who chooses to live life on her own terms, these stereotypes begin to crack and crumble. The myth that a woman without a man is incomplete is among the most enduring. It suggests her worth and identity derive only from her attachment to a partner. Without him, she is adrift, a half-person waiting to be made whole. But the woman who lives alone demonstrates daily that her value is intrinsic and unshaken by the presence or absence of a romantic relationship. Her laughter fills her rooms, her work shapes her community, her friendships sustain her. She proves that partnership can enrich a life, but is never the sole definition of one. Another insidious stereotype insists that a woman who lives alone must be unlovable, too demanding, or difficult. The implication is that if she were easier, sweeter, or more accommodating, a man would have claimed her. This backward thinking denies the possibility that she may have deliberately chosen this path for reasons rooted in self-respect and clarity of purpose. It assumes women only live alone as a last resort, not a conscious embrace of independence. But many women living alone today have walked away from unhealthy relationships or never entered them at all because they refuse to settle for anything less than respect and equality. Equally damaging is the stereotype of the lonely spinster, a woman imagined to be peering sadly out of her window, wasting away without male attention. Yet the truth is often starkly different. Women living alone are among the most vibrant contributors to art, science, business, and social causes. Freed from the time and energy demands of traditional roles, they channel their talents into pursuits that shape communities and inspire others. Rather than shrinking in solitude, they expand into their potential, revealing the lie behind the stereotype. These stereotypes are not merely outdated but harmful, serving as social pressures that keep women second-guessing their choices. The expectation that a woman must explain why she lives alone, something rarely demanded of men, illustrates how deeply the double standard runs. A man living alone is often seen as a bachelor, independent and perhaps even enviable. A woman in the same situation is frequently questioned or pitied, her life path seen as an unfortunate deviation rather than an equally valid alternative. Rejecting these stereotypes takes courage, for it means confronting not only the judgments of strangers, but often the subtle or overt expectations of family and friends. Parents may wonder what went wrong, friends may offer unsolicited advice, and colleagues might gossip about her supposed inability to keep a man. Facing these reactions without internalizing them is one of the greatest challenges women who live alone must meet. Yet in that process, they also find the extraordinary strength of living authentically despite external noise. The woman who rejects social stereotypes becomes a mirror for others, reflecting the possibility of a life defined by choice, not convention. Her example gives younger women permission to question the timelines imposed on them, whether they must marry by a certain age or feel ashamed if they prefer solitude. Older women, too, can find in her an affirmation that it is never too late to choose oneself. As more women publicly embrace living alone, they chip away at the cultural narratives that once confined them. Literature, media, and everyday conversations start to shift, making space for diverse experiences of womanhood. Stories emerge of women who travel the world alone, launch successful businesses, nurture friendships that become chosen families, or simply delight in the peace of a home they shape entirely to their liking. These stories are powerful counterweights to old stereotypes, demonstrating that a woman's life need not be confined to the narrow script she inherited. Each woman who stands firm in her choice to live alone becomes part of a quiet revolution, proving that fulfillment, joy, and purpose come in many forms. She shows that freedom from stereotypes is not a rejection of love or connection, but a refusal to be defined by society's limited imagination. By living boldly on her own terms, she helps build a world where every woman can choose her path without fear of judgment, knowing her worth does not depend on conforming to anyone else's expectations. To live alone as a woman is to stand on a threshold between independence and isolation, a place where the mind and heart wrestle with opposing truths. On one side lies the exhilarating freedom of owning every decision: what to eat for dinner, where to place the furniture which dreams to chase without compromise. On the other side waits the ache of returning each evening to a quiet apartment, the echo of footsteps in empty halls, the absence of another's warm presence. It is in this fragile tension that a woman discovers both her power and her vulnerability. Independence, in its purest form, is a triumph. A woman who lives alone wakes to the knowledge that every choice she makes is her own. Her mornings are set to her own rhythm, her evenings shaped by her desires. No one interrupts her thoughts, questions her habits, or dilutes her ambitions. She learns that she alone can soothe her anxieties and lift her spirits. She becomes the architect of her life, responsible for her happiness and accountable for her mistakes. This self-reliance breeds a quiet confidence that does not depend on external validation. It is forged in the small daily victories of surviving and thriving on one's own. Yet independence does not exist in a vacuum. Human beings are wired for connection. Our nervous systems seek attunement with others. Our hearts crave the safety of being seen and understood. For many women, the silence of an empty home can become a breeding ground for doubt. After long days, there is no partner waiting to share the mundane or monumental. When illness strikes, there is no one to fetch medicine or offer a reassuring touch. In moments of darkness, loneliness can seep into the strongest mind, whispering that her independence is not a sign of strength, but evidence of having been left behind. This duality reveals that independence and isolation are not separate roads but parallel tracks that can weave together at any moment. The same apartment that feels like a fortress of peace can suddenly resemble a prison of solitude, depending on one's inner state. A woman might rejoice in her autonomy at breakfast and mourn her aloneness by nightfall. This fluctuation is not a failure, but a fundamental truth of the human condition. We are creatures who yearn for both freedom and connection, and living alone forces a woman to balance these needs with greater awareness than most. To choose independence means accepting its cost. It is the cost of facing moments of emptiness with no distraction. It is the cost of carrying one's burdens alone, without the relief of sharing the weight. But it also means reaping the benefits of unfiltered self-knowledge. In solitude, a woman discovers what she believes, what she values, and what she fears, without these convictions being blurred by someone else's influence. She learns to cultivate hobbies and passions that arise from her own curiosity rather than shared compromise. She makes decisions from a place of clarity, unclouded by the need to please or appease another. Living alone sharpens resilience. When something breaks in the middle of the night, she must decide whether to fix it herself or call for help. When finances are strained, there is no one else's income to rely on. These challenges teach her that self-sufficiency is not only about the freedom to do what she wants, but also the ability to handle the consequences. Over time, this responsibility transforms into a quiet pride, the knowledge that she is capable of surviving and, more importantly, thriving on her own. Yet, thriving in solitude requires intentional effort. A woman who lives alone must learn to reach out before isolation becomes loneliness. She must recognize when independence slides into emotional withdrawal. It takes strength to pick up the phone and ask for company, to join community groups, or to build friendships that fill the spaces once occupied by romantic partners. These connections, freely chosen and nurtured, do not diminish her independence, they anchor it. They remind her that even as she walks her own path, she remains part of a larger human tapestry. In the dance between independence and isolation, a woman who lives alone gains a profound understanding of herself. She learns that independence is not the absence of connection, but the ability to stand whole within herself while still engaging with others. She realizes that solitude can be both a sanctuary and a trial, each teaching different lessons. By embracing both realities, she crafts a life that reflects her deepest truths rather than society's expectations. Through this delicate balance, she discovers that independence does not have to mean isolation, but rather the freedom to choose when, how, and with whom she shares her remarkable life.